welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 578. And today's date is January 29th, 2015. And the title of this episode is U.S. Government Central Bankers Can't Stop the Economic Collapse. Instead, they will cover it up. Let's get right into the economic collapse news. Now, we understand the new Greek government is now in office. And of course, what they will do is they'll go to their new residence and they'll, set everything up the way they like it. And when they entered this new residence, what did they find? No power, no Wi-Fi, no toilet paper, no soap. Actually, things in Greece are really bad. And the outgoing government left the Maximus mansion without anything. And we can see right now, from everything that we are looking at and everything this new government is looking at, they see that things are actually a lot worse than told to them. And we see that Alexis Tsipras was putting out the message to China, to Russia, listen, if we need help, if we need financial assistance, would you help us? They've already said that they would veto any sanctions against Russia. So right now, Russia, China, the BRICS system is looking at Greece. And we can see that Putin has responded. He has said that Russia would give financing for Greece if asked. And we can see right now all the threats from the Eurozone, from the IMF, from the central banking system, is just that, threats. Greece has the ability to look to other systems, other central bank systems, and receive funding. And of course, the United States, the EU, the entire private Western central bank system, they do not like this whatsoever. And we know that they are pushing an agenda to keep them in line. How well is it going to work? We don't know at this point, but we're going to have to watch this very carefully. Now, here in the United States, what are we seeing? Well, they've come out and saying that initial jobless claims have collapsed to 15-year lows. And we have to remember, when they figure all this out, we have to remember that those people who are no longer getting interviews in the last 4 weeks, but are still sending out resumes, they are counted as fallen off. They no longer want work. Also, if you work part-time, you really don't qualify for this. And we can see a lot of retail stores that are closing, and a lot of these people are getting laid off. They don't qualify. If you made less than $500 a week in most states, you don't qualify. If you work less than 6 months, during the holidays, you don't qualify. If you got a severance, you might not qualify. If you were self-employed or working on a 1099, you don't qualify. If you work for tips in the service sector, you don't qualify. Union workers don't qualify in most states. You will file with the union. And I want to thank Xwired from the People for putting this together. This was very insightful about all the things that, all the people that don't qualify for this unemployment insurance. And we can see right now, after 4 weeks missing expectations, initial jobless claims totally and utterly collapsed last week. It's amazing. Printing 265,000, beating the 300,000 expectation by the most in years. The 13.9% drop was the biggest since September 2005. This is the lowest initial claims data since the financial crisis, and in fact, the lowest since April of 2000. But then we look at the shale states, and they are in trouble because their initial claims through the second week of January show a massive surge in initial claims. And we have to remember, since the start of this year, we've had about 33 to 34,000 people that have been laid off. And when we look at this, we see, yes, those states, these shale states, the initial jobless claims in Texas, Colorado, North Dakota, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, have shot up. They went from 40,000 all the way up to 76,000. Amazing. That is a lot of people. And we can see that this economy that they're continually trying to convince us that we're in this recovery is not recovering. I mean, we're looking at the real economic indications, not the manipulated numbers, not the stock market, not the suppression of precious metals with the suppression of oil. We're looking at what's going on here in the United States. Actually, if we look back in 1929, we're starting to see the same exact situations where the stock market rose to all-time new highs. Back then, it was about 400 points. People were looking at that saying the economy is doing fantastic. And at the same time, Europe was in a recession/depression. What's happening right now? We're seeing Europe in a recession/depression. And here in the United States, what are we looking at? Well, everyone's looking at the stock market. They're continually keeping that pumped up. But when we look around the country and we look at all the stores closing, we look at all the people being laid off, the people who are being let go because there's just no business for them. When we look at the real estate industry, we see that it is collapsing right in front of our eyes, and they're doing everything they possibly can to pump it up. Right now, pending home sales, they have plunged in December by 3.7%, month on month. This is the second largest since May 2010, drastically missing expectations of a 0.5% increase in sales. They were completely off. But we already knew this. We knew this going way back. We predicted it because we looked at the indicators. We knew what was coming. And we understand that people are tapped out. They don't have the money. All regions saw weakness, but the Northeast was the worst with 7.5% month on month. The National Association of Realtors chief economist proclaims it is time for current homeowners to realize their equity gains and they need to trade up and get a more expensive, bigger home. Yeah, this is the time to do it. I would say absolutely not. I would say prices are continually coming down. People can't sell their homes at this point. We're starting to see the same trend that we saw back in 2007. This is what we are seeing right now. And guess what? It's not going to get any better. I know they're putting together all these programs with 3% down. They're lowering the mortgage insurance rate to help people out. They're continually suppressing the interest rates. They're doing everything they possibly can to keep this system going. But it's not going to help. But what's very interesting, and they're continually telling us that the real estate market is doing well. Home builders are building. Everything is fine. We are seeing a tick up. This is the best time to go out and purchase a existing home or a new home. But when you look at lumber sales compared to what the home builders are building, the question is, why is lumber declining? It makes no sense. It makes no sense that lumber sales would be declining if home builders are continually building like there's no tomorrow. Like the real estate market is just increasing and getting better and accelerating like the corporate media, like the government is trying to tell us. Of course, the home builders, they're wishing and hoping that the economy gets better, that the real estate industry gets better and people come out and spend money. They're really depending on this spring season. We saw what happened last spring. We saw a little bump up and everything started to decline. I don't even know if we're going to see a bump up this time. I think people are so tapped out and there are so many people getting laid off, so many retail stores closing, so many people saying, you know what, I just don't have any money. You can give me a house for free and all I have to do is pay for the mortgage payments, and I don't think I can do it at this time. And this is spreading all across the country. I looked around the country. You know what I see? I see people trying to sell their homes, but there is no traffic. Actually, U.S. home ownership fell to a 20-year low in the fourth quarter. The seasonally adjusted home ownership rate slipped to 63.9%, the lowest level since the third quarter of 1994. Who's buying these homes? Think about it for a second. Who is buying these homes? These homes are being bought out by investment companies, hedge funds, and foreign investors. They're getting the free money from the central banking system to purchase these homes, to keep them, rent them out if you can. The banks are instructed, do not foreclose. Do not let the inventory out, because if you do that, the prices will implode. And this is why, with many people, they're not foreclosing on the homes. They're letting people live there without paying their mortgages, because they realize they need to keep this going. We also continually take a look at manufacturing. We take a look at the Baltic Dry Index, the raw materials that are shipped all around the world to manufacture goods. And what do we see? Well, the Baltic Dry Index now has dropped to 632 points, down 34. This is lower than the Great Recession of, I think the Baltic Dry Index was about 647. We are below that right now. So back then, we were in a Great Recession with the Baltic Dry Index around 647. Today, we're at 632, but we're in a recovery? Does this make sense? No, it doesn't. Because they're manipulating all the other data. They're manipulating GDP, inflation, unemployment, the stock market, precious metals, oil, you name it. Any statistical number that they can manipulate, that's what they're doing. To convince you that everything is fine here in the United States, in Canada, in Australia. Europe's having a problem. But it will spread, and it is spreading. We see Canada already revising all their unemployment numbers to make this year look a lot better. We're starting to see that this is having a ripple effect, and it is spreading. And we understand the United States government's central bankers, those people who want a one-world government, who would like to have a North American Union, just like the European Union. Well, they're pushing their agenda. They're out there saying that the 21st century is to be an American century. It will be the year of the United States, Canada, and Mexico. That they need to share their economic, environmental, demographic, and cultural destiny with each other. How we move together is a key to our success. In recognition of our shared destiny, the three countries should create a North American passport that would, over time, allow their citizens to travel, work, invest, learn, and innovate anywhere in North America. So we can see right now, they're pushing for a union. They opened up the borders. They have facial recognition systems on the borders now. They're putting together the Real ID system. They're sharing the database with Canada and Mexico. They're getting prepared for this. They're getting ready. In the North American context, much like within the European Union, our economies and societies are far more integrated than our immigration system recognizes. A North American passport, much like the EU passport, would align our laws with reality. Well, we need to understand this. The European countries, they created a European Union. And the majority of them are now suffering with debt, with high unemployment. And these countries are looking at Greece right now, looking and saying, we can't wait to see what they're going to do And if they spur economic growth and they come out of this debt where they write it off or drop the EU and go with the Eurasian Economic Union, maybe we should do this with them. So if the union in Europe didn't work, why would they think the North American Union is going to be any better? And you can see what they're trying to do. They're trying to create two ginormous unions on either side of the Atlantic and eventually combine them into one. Because what they want is a single government system. And this is what they're trying to do. And they're pushing their agenda as hard as they possibly can. They want the TTIP, the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership. They want this. I mean, it's not good for the people. They won't even let Congress or the people read it. This is how you know it's not for us. It's for the corporations. It's for the central bankers. It's for them. A newly document concerning the talks around the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership indicates that the floodgates could be open even further for corporate influence. The leak has been analyzed by the corporate watchdog CEO and lobby control and shows that corporate influence on EU and US policies might dramatically increase via the chapter on so-called regulatory cooperation. The leak of the EU draft negotiating proposal dated January 23rd makes unmistakably clear that the EU is seeking a very ambitious chapter that strengthens the role of business in future regulatory legislation, possibly via a new institution, the Regulatory Cooperation Body, the RCB. Its role would be to coordinate the process of regulatory coherence between US and EU and would effectively limit policy space and sideline the public and civil organizations. Regulatory cooperation is a ploy to open the door to massive influence by big business over future laws. Regulatory cooperation can provide a space for business groups and regulators to reach results to their liking after the TTIP is agreed in the long term and without much public scrutiny. The agenda of regulatory cooperation is first and foremost about promoting trade, not about securing consumer rights, public health, or any other public policy objective. The only way the public has access to what is really being negotiated is through leaked documents. And we have to remember, which I discussed in a previous report about fascism. And I went back and I looked and I said, wait a minute. Everything they're doing, the North American Union, the European Union, the TTIP, everything that they're doing and everything that we've been seeing, it fits into points 9 and 10. And we have to remember, this is from Dr. Lawrence Britt. He's examined the fascist regimes of Germany, Italy, Spain, Indonesia, and other countries. And he's found 14 defining characteristics common to each. Number 9, corporate power is protected. The industrial and business aristocracy of fascist nation often are the ones who put the government leaders into power, creating a mutually beneficial business-government relationship and power elite. Is this not what we are seeing? Number 10, labor power is suppressed, because the organizing power of labor is the only real threat to a fascist government. Labor unions are either eliminated entirely or are severely suppressed. And we can see from everything that they're doing, we are fitting into this model. And this is what they're pushing on every single person. Now, out in New Hampshire, they're proposing a bill, and we understand that DHS, the U.S. government, they want to nationalize the police force. They want the police forces in the state and the local communities to come under the jurisdiction of the federal government. And they've been giving them militarized weapons, dressing them up in fatigues, giving them body armor, giving them tanks, surveillance equipment, machine guns. The question is, why do we need all this? Why do we need a military force in our local communities. We don't. We don't need this whatsoever. But why are they doing it? Because they are getting prepared for what is coming. But New Hampshire, they're out there and they are proposing a bill, House Bill 407, which will implement a ban on state and local officials obtaining or using certain military weaponry acquired from the Pentagon. The bill 407, the Police Equipment and Community Engagement Act, would bar officials from possessing any military equipment not readily available in an open national commercial market. It states, no state, agency, or political subdivision of this state shall acquire, purchase, or otherwise accept for use any military equipment, vehicle, or military-grade hardware, including but not limited to armored personnel carriers, Title II weapons, unmanned area vehicles, or unmanned ground vehicles, unless such military-grade vehicles or hardware is readily available in an open national commercial market. And I completely agree with this. There is absolutely no reason why these local police organizations, police units, need any of this. I mean, a town of 5,000 people, they need a tank, they need weapons, they need to be militarized? No, these are people of the community. That's why we have local police, because they live there. Their children live there. Their parents live there. And it's to keep the community safe. Not to put the police on one side and the people on the other. But this is how the federal government wants it. They want the police on one side, and they want them to look scary to the people, to keep control. And this is exactly what they are doing. Now, we understand YouTube does block certain videos. Now, they are out there and they're saying with some 300 hours of videos uploaded to YouTube each minute, it is impossible to block all terrorist-related material from the platform. Harding detailed exceptions from the rule, stating that many media outlets did show portions of those beheading videos without getting flagged. Now, of course, those that are allowed to show it are the corporate media like CNN, MSNBC, and of course they leave out and they splice the video to make it seem like, yes, they are being beheaded. Those people who put the videos up in the alternative or new media, who point out and indicate certain things that don't make sense, those videos were taken down. Actually, all the inconsistencies of Sandy Hook, seems like those videos were taken down. The videos of what happened in Paris, France, showing that there's no blood, showing that the person to get shot in the head seemed to be taken down. Very interesting how they are selective. And there are certain channels that are completely taken down. I mean, the X22 Report was taken down in 2014, July 4th weekend. Why? I don't know. The reason was never explained. But one morning on a Saturday, woke up and the channel was taken down. And later in the day, it was brought back up. A lot of people helped. A lot of people wrote into YouTube trying to figure out why this happened. There were no strikes on my channel whatsoever. But we see they're very selective. And what they're saying really doesn't make sense. And I think they're trying to explain it away. Now, out in Canada, we understand they have a spy agency just like the United States, which has NSA. Theirs is called the Canada's Communications Security Establishment, CSE. And they do the same thing the NSA does. And this is according to Edward Snowden. Millions of pictures, videos, and other files downloaded online globally are being watched by Canada's electronic spy agency, CSE. And what they do is pretty much, they do the same thing as the NSA. And every country is doing this. So if you think you're living in a country where you're not being spied on, guess what? You are. Might not be out there letting you know they're spying, but guess what? They are spying on every single person because this is what they're afraid of. They're afraid of the people, and they're trying to make social profiles of every single person, trying to link them to everyone. And we can see they're putting together more and more laws to limit our rights. Out in the UK, a former British intelligence chief was warned that the government's counter-terrorism and security bill could restrict freedom of speech in universities. Didn't we just have a march in Paris about how the countries were for freedom of speech? And they were all for the people's rights, and we know a lot of people that were marching, a lot of government officials that were marching in this France march, they pretty much don't have freedom of speech. Baroness Manningham Buller said extremist opinions need to be exposed, challenged, and countered, not banned. Senior academics have called for a campaign against the bill, arguing it could turn university staff into thought police. New legislation includes plans to make the government's prevent strategy a statutory obligation for universities, meaning educational institutions would have a legal duty to ban speakers who are considered extremists. Bates, a junior minister in the House office, said freedom of speech is not an absolute. Well, yeah, it is. The duty is to secure freedom of speech within the law. No, the freedom of speech is allowed. You're allowed to say whatever you want. People might not agree with you. People can argue with what you're saying. People might not like what you're saying. But guess what? Everyone has the right to talk about what they want. And we can see what they are doing here. They don't want certain people out there speaking about certain things. So they're trying to limit free speech. It's happening in Australia. It's happening in the UK, France, Spain, here in the United States. And if they could, they would get rid of all these rights. They would love to do this. They would love to have total control over everybody. This is what they've been trying to do for years. Go back in time. Look at all the laws they've put into place, trying to limit all the rights of the people. They even has gone so far here in the United States to set up free speech areas. So you know they're continually doing this incrementally, convincing people. Common Core today says you do not have rights. They're privileges, and the government can take them away anytime they want, and we know that's a lie. Nobody can take away your rights. Now, out in Ukraine, we understand there was a coup d'etat. We understand it was planned by the United States. But what we don't realize is that there was a video of Deputy Oleg Sarov speaking to the Ukraine's parliament back in November of 2013. And he warned them. And I have the video on the X22Report.com site. When you come to the X22Report.com site, just click on the report title, and that will bring you to the full page, and you can see the video there. Those people on YouTube, you can come to the site or search on YouTube for the video. And here is some of the translation of that video. Activists of the organization Voilya turned to me, providing clear evidence that within our territory, with support and direct participation of the U.S. Embassy in Kiev, the Tech Camp project is realized, under which preparations are being made for a civil war in Ukraine. This was back in November of 2013. The Tech Camp project prepares specialists for information warfare and the discrediting of state institutions using modern media, potential revolutionaries for organizing protests and the toppling of the state order. The project is currently overseen and under the responsibility of the U.S. Ambassador to Ukraine, Jeffrey R. Pyatt. I have learned they succeeded to access facilities of Tech Camp, disguising as a team of IT specialists. American instructors explaining how social networks and internet technologies can be used for targeting manipulation of public opinion, as well as to activate protest potential, to provoke violent unrest on the territory of Ukraine, radicalization of the population triggering infight. Recent conference took place on November 14th, 2013. in the heart of Kiev on the embassy of the United States of America. You tell me which country in the world would allow a NGO to operate out of the U.S. Embassy? This is disrespectful to the Ukraine government and against the Ukraine people. I ask you to consider this as an official beseech to pursue an investigation of this case. So they already knew the United States was planning for a civil war inside Ukraine, planning for a coup d'etat. And they were warning the Ukrainian government. So this was in preparation and planned for a long while. And we understand that, yes, it went forward. Even Alexis Tsipras, the new head of the Syriza party, speaking back in May 2014, says he believes that the new government in Ukraine came to power as a result of a coup and call it a junta. We should not accept or recognize the government of neo-Nazis in Ukraine. Other countries knew what was going on. They realized what the United States did. They realized that the United States did a regime change, like they're trying to do in China and Russia right now, like they've done in the Middle East and in Africa. And they're continually pushing their agenda as hard as they can. They want war. Everything that they've been doing is not helping the situation. They thought by doing this they would prop up the system and they'd be able to keep the system going and there would be no collapse. But what we're seeing, it's not working. They realize this. They understand, and their only course of action right now is war. This is why they're pushing so hard. The EU Council has extended individual sanctions imposed on Russia officials that were supposed to expire in March. They're not letting up. They're going to continually push their agenda as hard as they possibly can. Now, we understand the United States is giving a loan to Ukraine of about $2 billion, but Ukraine, who's also received $1.8 billion from the EU and about $400 million from Canada, the IMF has also given Ukraine money. Ukraine is not satisfied. They want more of your hard-earned money, America. They're looking to get $3 billion in financial aid. Ukraine is pressing the Obama administration to provide political support as much as $3 billion in financial aid and non-lethal weapons because they realize they can't keep the system going. It's collapsing. No matter how much debt they pour on, they don't have the revenue to pay for the interest. We realize that in Ukraine, their system is collapsing. We understand that many of the people who are being drafted don't want to go off to war. You have to remember, a lot of these people have family on the other side in the southeastern region. And they're nervous, like, what happens if I'm firing on my cousin or my brother? And we can see that Ukraine is continually pushing with their drafts. Ukraine has recruited about 45,000 draftees in the first 9 days of mobilization. This sounds like peace. Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko said that Ukraine plans to hold 3 waves of mobilization this year. The first one, about 50,000 people. That began on January 20th and will last 90 days. The second will begin in April. And we can see a lot of these people are looking, and a lot of these people are saying, I don't want to fight here. And a lot of them are not showing up. But they're saying at least 45,000 right now have passed their medical checks and have been officially recruited and sent to training centers ready to fight in the next great offensive. Now, the Ukrainian hacker group Cyber, they leaked documents Wednesday that allegedly exposed massive casualties and terrible morale among the Kiev troops attacking eastern Ukraine. The cyber activists allegedly hacked a computer of the Ukrainian Judge Advocate General, leaking a number of classified documents. The documents reveal that, in reality, Kiev is struggling to keep things under control, desperately trying to cover up the real situation in Ukraine, where government troops are involved in a so-called anti-terrorist operation. And we're seeing that a lot of these soldiers have been killed, at least 1,100 Ukrainian soldiers have died, and more than 100 tanks have been destroyed. But they keep covering this up, and they keep saying, Russia is invading. Russia has tanks in here. They're the ones who are doing it. We just can't show any proof. We just can't give you satellite imagery. We just can't give you videos. You're just going to have to believe us. Well, the chief of Ukraine's general military staff, Viktor Muzhenko, acknowledged that Russian regular army units were not involved in combat action. Right now, the Ukrainian army is not engaged in combat operation against Russian units. There is absolutely no way you can possibly hide the huge military formations on a relatively small territory wide open to reporters and the OSCE. I mean, where would they hide 500 tanks? Where would they put 9,000 soldiers? Think about this for a second. It makes no sense. And of course, as we know, the United States, Kiev, NATO, they have satellites right above. If they spotted something, believe me, the satellite images would be in color, 3D, close up, showing the markings of the Russian tanks. They would be plastered all over the corporate media. But they have nothing to show you. Poroshenko is out there saying they are strengthening their defense along the Donbass line. We are getting ready. With all the new draftees coming in, we are going to have a strong front. Russia is warning the West that this war with Ukraine is going to be a catastrophe. And they're saying, stop this. Don't go any further with this. They're saying that the United States central bankers need to stop supporting the party of war. But they don't want to stop. They want this war because their system's collapsing. And they realize this, and they understand that they got to keep pushing. They cannot stop. Now, Yatsenyuk has created a military brigade with Poland and Lithuania. The head of government of Ukraine, Yatsenyuk, introduced a bill to create, together with Lithuania, Poland, a military brigade, which will be called, I'm going to try to pronounce this. This is one word I'm totally going to botch. Litpoluk Brig. The main objectives are of association, participation in international efforts to preserve peace, strengthen military cooperation in the region. So they're bringing in Poland and Lithuania at this time to help out and to help the situation. We see already that the Pentagon is out there, and they're starting to realize that the U.S. may lose high-tech military superiority to China and Russia. The Pentagon has expressed deep concern about the U.S. eventually losing its military technological superiority over rivals such as Russia and China, and is urging NATO to develop innovative weapons to close cooperation to optimize military spending. I am very concerned about the increasing risk of loss of U.S. military technological superiority, Pentagon arms buyer Frank Kendall told a House Armed Service Committee. We are at risk, and the situation is getting worse. He warned, specifying that his concerns lay with the heavy investments into weapons done by China and Russia, and their outdoing NATO and the United States. And we knew this. We knew their weapons at this point are superior to the United States weapons. And we see already Pentagon is getting nervous. So what are they going to do? They're going to put aside more money and build more advanced weapons. Because they need to get ready for war. Actually, it will make those people in the industrial war complex richer by doing this. And you can see how the central bankers get rich on the buildup of war, during war, and after war. Now, out in the Middle East, we see that Yemen, their government has fallen, but the Yemen people have captured a key military base south of the capital where U.S. advisors had previously trained counter-terrorism forces. They say the Republic Guard camp captured Thursday was used by the American experts to bomb those people who might be rising up against the puppet government. We see the situation in Yemen is getting worse by the day. In Syria, the talks in Moscow really didn't go anywhere. The opposition couldn't agree on anything. And we see that troops are headed out to Iraq. About 1,000 paratroopers from the brigade will deploy this week as part of the Operation Inherent Resolve mission. So they are on their way to the Middle East. The Islamic State right now is shooting at planes at the Baghdad airport. So we can see right now they're continually trying to show that there needs to be some type of buffer zone, no-fly zone in Iraq and in Syria. And they're going to continually try this until they have a main event. Now, there is a congressman out there, and he's asking a question that he's skeptical of the U.S.-backed solution to stabilize Iraq and Syria. He's saying, we have been bombing about 2,000 airstrikes with this massive coalition. Why has the Islamic State gained ground? Why is it getting worse in Syria? It makes no sense. Maybe we need to put troops on the ground. Well, if these congressmen did a little research, they would realize that the U.S. is backing the Islamic State. We already understand that one of the Islamic State leaders that was caught in Pakistan already said that he gets paid by the U.S. And he is paid $600 for everyone that he brings into the Islamic State. They're not there to destroy the Islamic State in Syria. They are there to help them gain more and more ground. And this is exactly what has been happening. Now, come June 1st, Congress must reauthorize the Patriot Act. Now, we've said this many, many times before. These bills and these laws that have these titles like Patriot Act or the Affordable Care Act or the Ukrainian Freedom Act, the titles are meaningless. It's always the opposite. This is not patriotism to spy on the American people. And they need to reauthorize the Patriot Act come June 1st to allow the cyber information sharing bill to go forward. They need this in place. And we can see right now, will Congress pass this? Most likely they will. Most likely they will just go ahead and do it just like they've done with the NDAA, with all the provisions to call anyone who doesn't agree with the government a terrorist and put them into jail with no due process. We can see right now, this is exactly what the government is doing. They are protecting themselves with all these laws. This is why all of this is in place right now. And we understand to push certain laws, they need to have events. We've been seeing cyber attacks quite often. Where Sony was cyber attacked, Neiman Marcus, Target, Home Depot, you name it, we're seeing cyber attacks all over the place. But what we're finding out is that these malware systems that are used in these cyber attacks, they all are very similar. And by looking at the code, they all point back to the National Security Agency. Der Spiegel published the source code for a computer program called QWERTY, a piece of software designed to intercept all keyboard keys pressed on the victim and record them for later inspection. And this malware, when looked at, fits into and is very similar to many other malware pieces of software that are created by the NSA. The Reagan tool has also been linked to hacks which targeted the International Atomic Energy Agency based in Austria and other places, and it all goes back to the NSA. So we can safely assume at this point that those attacks on Neiman Marcus, Target, and many others have been done by the NSA to push their agenda of passing legislation. And if you ever noticed, every time there's a cyber attack, yes, they tell us that credit card information was hacked into, but have we ever seen anyone going, oh my God, here's 10,000 people where they've been using these cards? We really haven't heard much of that. most of the time when these places have been hacked, it's names, address, phone number, all these things that are already out there, and it's completely meaningless. And if the United States government is hacked, it's always their Twitter account or their Facebook account, which is absolutely meaningless. So we can see right now all of this is to push their agenda. Now we see that the British and the US agents will carry out a mock cyber attack or cyber war games on the Bank of England and commercial banks in City of London and on Wall Street in the coming months. Now we've seen this before when they have drills. We understand that at many of these times they actually go full speed ahead. They get the green light to push a false flag event. And we can see right now that if these banks are hacked, they will implement the bail-in documents. The FDIC does not cover a cyber attack, so none of these banks will be insured. Yes, they have other insurance in place, but we can see right now that this drill could go live, and we're going to have to watch this very carefully. Now, we see the DHS is out there, and they're warning of a possible terrorist attack here in the United States. The United States should stay on alert for a possible acts of terrorism because of what happened in France and Australia and Canada. I will not try to surmise the mindset of Al-Qaeda. I do believe that the attacks in Europe posed the cause for the further attacks in the West by these groups means that here in the United States we have to be vigilant in looking out for similar attacks, and this is coming from Jay Johnson from DHS. We also see the Super Bowl is coming up this Sunday. Now, that doesn't mean there's going to be a terrorist attack, but it's something that we need to keep an eye on. And what's very interesting during this time period is that NORAD is doing something very interesting. They will have planes in the skies over the University of Phoenix Stadium. NORAD is currently running drills simulating terrorist attacks. They said we're practicing for what we'll be doing during the Super Bowl. Now, they ran these same exact attacks during September 11th, 2001. These were called Exercise Falcon Virgo. And they were being held during the same exact time period in September 11th, 2001. And this is why I'm bringing this up, because they're doing the same exact thing. Very close to where the Super Bowl is being held. Very interesting, and this is something that we will have to look at, keep an eye on, and watch. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.